What is good, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. If you are new to this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you hit subscribe, share it with your friends. If you enjoy it, give us a little review. It means the world. Keeps the podcast going and keeps everybody listening and getting more and more bigger artists to tell more and more interesting stories. So this week on the podcast, the one and only Hayden James. Hayden, I've been aware of his music for the last few years, and I'm truly amazed with what he does and the line he sits in the electronic music scene. I speak about this on the podcast with him, and he is in the process of finishing his third studio album, which is an amazing achievement. We spoke about having hit records, Something About You, his most recent biggest record, We Could Be Love, Just Friends, and just kind of talking about the process of writing records, dealing with the pressure of having hit records, touring, family life, balance of writing music and having kids and having a wife and then having to tour around the rest of the world and also live in Australia. We spoke about a bunch of things to do with the process of writing an album, which I always find super interesting. So, without further ado, Hayden James. Mr. Hayden James, what's cooking, man?
Mate, I'm great. How you doing?
Yeah, good, man. I'm good. Thanks for doing this. What time is it then, right now?
It is 9:30 p.m. in Sydney.
Not too bad. It's not too bad.
It's not that late, but when you go to bed at like 8 p.m. usually, it's a bit late.
What is this about Australians? Like every time I go to Australia, like everyone's like goes to bed really early and up at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I have two kids, so it's
Makes sense.
so that's the whole thing. Yeah, because they're great sleepers, but they get up at like 6:30, and if I'm in the studio working and sometimes I do till like midnight, I've got 6 hours, and I'm like, it's just a countdown timer, just straight away, so it's a bit difficult.
Is sleep like something that you battle with being a touring artist?
You know what? Because I usually do a lot of like Sydney to LA, and I kind of, when I first started doing it, I had a whole like, just method of just like, this is how we do it, blah, blah, blah. But then I get a bit stressed if I like missed a sleep on a plane and it'd screw me up. But, I've been pretty good the last couple of years. And it's like, basically the thing is like exercise and don't drink. It's weird how that works. But, I did recently do Sydney, Austin for like 2 days and then to London. And I was in London for a week, and I basically woke up at like 1 a.m. every morning in London. And that was a shock because I hadn't had that much. Yeah, that was really tough.
Yeah, the time changes are different. They're pretty tough from England to Australia. It can be rough.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of opposite. So, yeah, I'm actually coming over for like a week at the end of April. So I'll let you know. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Let me know when you're in town as well, because I might be around. Are you coming for touring?
I'm just coming for one show.
Damn.
This is the thing about living in Australia. It's like, oh, this show's really good, I should do it, but it's a 24-hour flight. It's I'm playing at the Drum Shed, so I'm like, I got to do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a big one. That venue is, I've not been, but I've only seen videos, but it's ridiculous.
It looks crazy. I can't pass it up. And it's like Our House, like James Hype and Medusa. So it's
Medusa, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great lineup too. So I'm like, I got to be on it. So I'm doing a bit of like a writing trip around it. So yeah, I'll let you know. We should jump in.
Yeah, let me know if you're in town. We'll definitely jump in.
Sick.
How do you find that? I want to like talk to you about that with being an Australian artist. Most people that have success out of Australia or in Australia then transforms into the rest of the world, UK, Europe, America, generally leave Australia because of Australia's, although it's such a big country, it's such a small population to kind of build a career in.
Yeah.
How have you found that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to answer that question. It's the start of my career obviously was like, I'm an Australian artist and I wasn't touring and I couldn't tour
Yeah.
because I wasn't getting booked anywhere else in the world. So I kind of, you lean in on your own skills and the people around you. And that's kind of how I learned to do what I do now. So that worked out. But also some of the biggest stuff I've written is definitely with artists from the UK and the US.
Yeah.
That was like, I guess, it was kind of before COVID. I did a bunch of trips, like writing trips to LA and met some people, and then those. I think it's really great when it's hard to have a studio session with someone you've never met over Zoom. Even like
Yeah.
it's just quite difficult to get the vibe. But if you've at least met once, even for a coffee, and you kind of just like have that initial chat, then you can get into that vibe, and I feel that that's a bit easier. So I did do that before COVID, which allowed me to kind of lean in on those relationships a little bit more. But I guess you can't beat fly over there and be there in person, and that's what I've been doing. The last couple of years after COVID, it's been great.
How do you plan, like, how do you schedule out your writing to your touring to family life and everything like that? Because I know it's only let's say for instance 24-hour trip. Like, although it's in the grand scheme of life, it's not that hard, right? Like,
No,
we all make it out to be this really hard thing, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not hard.
totally.
But how do you schedule that out? Do you work on specific touring times, or like how is that
Yeah,
for
it's
you?
it's hard. Well, it's about just getting ahead of it and having a team that kind of understands what I need. So having the agents that kind of like work with me and understand that I want to be home. Like I love music and I love touring and I love writing and all that kind of stuff. But like obviously nothing beats being with my kids and my family. So that's the number one priority.
Mm,
Um, Next year, my eldest son goes to like big school, like kindergarten, and we won't be able to. So at the moment, we kind of travel all together still, which is great. So if I've got like a tour in the States, we'll all be in LA, and I'll just like jot around the place. But from next year, we won't be able to do that. So in my head, I've got the grand plan of like, oh, I can do 2 weekends in the States and just be away for 11 days. So it'll be
yeah.
kind of like I work in like a mine or something. It'll be like I'm away for 2 weeks and I'm back for 2 or 3, and then we'll just see how it goes. But
That's such an Australian analogy.
yeah, I was thinking that. I'm like, oh, I don't know.
You've got to explain that to anybody that's not Australian.
Yeah, well, in Australia, there's lots of mining. So there's like iron ore, like that's probably the biggest thing. But a lot of these miners will, all of these mines are like in very remote places around Australia, and they have to go for 2 or 3 weeks at a time and not be home. And it is so specific. And then they get to come home and they'll like be home for 2 or 3 weeks. So it's yeah, mining and touring as a DJ is exactly the same.
It is. It is
Yeah,
exactly the same.
yeah. But yeah, honestly, it's kind of like it's just I just got to you figure it out as you go, kind of thing.
Mm,
In terms of like figuring out when we tour and when I write and all that kind of stuff, I do. I don't really write. I've listened to your podcast a bunch, and I think it was James Hype that said something like, oh, I wrote 5 tracks on the last flight. I'm like, what, are you kidding me? Like,
yeah.
what am I doing wrong? What's going on?
I
But
hate people like that. I can't do it.
I don't get that. I don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, this is my like. This is I'm at home, and this is like a room within a room. Got all my gear and stuff, and I love just being in here. Although I do like to like, rent an Airbnb or like, come to London for a week and rent someone's
Mm,
studio and just like be in the one place. I can't kind of travel too much and write. I like to be somewhere for that week and kind of go from there. So
yeah.
yeah, it's always different. I'm writing my third album right now, and it's definitely different to the last two. Just because I write differently, there's different techniques I've, come across, or I've found that I write with someone really well and we've written a bunch of tracks together. And so it's always different.
With regards to writing albums, I'm kind of interested in getting into this with you. So your first album was Between Us,
Hmm.
and then your second album was Lifted. It came out in
Yeah.
2022. process of writing an album, like, is it the
Scary.
case of, yeah, no, it is, because I've just done it myself.
Oh, amazing. Have you
Yeah, but
finished?
yeah, it's finished and everything. Like, it's
Congrats.
been in the works for a long time, but
Yeah.
I can now say it's finished because it's coming out this year.
Sick.
But yeah, what's your how do you kind of, from literally the deciding of to write an album, like, how does that process start? Because I think that's for me is like the most interesting part of it for
The why.
an artist. Yeah, why?
Yeah, it's
And
a great.
it's also, sorry to butt in as well. It's
No.
also really interesting where you sit in this scene, because, and this is no, whatever I'm going to say, please don't be offended by it, because it's not me being offensive, but like, you sit in a very niche kind of house music, but songs, like,
Yeah.
commercially accessible music, but it's not super cheesy,
Yeah.
and it's not super underground, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But you sit in this like really nice packaged kind of sound that just
Yeah.
works really well for you. And I'll be honest, I don't see many other people doing what you're doing, and I kind of want to like work out how the fuck you got there as well, and how that kind of got to the point of like, okay, now I'm an album artist.
Yeah. Thank you. I always honestly have felt like an outsider to like
Yeah.
the house world, and all my other friends that travel and stuff, they're, DJs, and they write house music and dance music, and, just very, very different music to me. And I've always found, yeah, I like the kid in the playground that no one really wants to play with, which is it's kind of it's hard. And I've found myself a lot going like, oh, I want to be like that. And then they're going, no, I want to be like you. And then I've got my manager and my team going like, dude, you have something so unique here. Like, lean into that. It's
Yeah.
kind of a battle. It's kind of a little bit of a battle in my head, because it's like, you can't unsee the insane success that you can get from just writing a pretty simple dance record. And I
Yeah.
find that stuff, not that I'm not taking away from it, but it's like, I find writing music and creating that emotional connection much more difficult, and crafting something that people could listen to over a lifetime, more so than just like in a moment. So yeah,
And I think that's the thing though, isn't it, as well, is like, you're writing songs, whereas it's changed a lot, the scene, especially the house and techno scene for me, and I'd like to get your take on it. For me, it's a lot of music in the house scene, or the electronic space, is kind of very throwaway now.
yeah,
And it feels like it's a purposely written. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna go in the studio, write a record for this label, or for this playlist, or for this TikTok moment, or for this whatever I need to achieve to get out of that record, rather than the other way around, where it should be is like, I need to write a record to make myself feel this, or to make the audience feel this, or
yeah.
however that is.
Yeah,
But
where's the Chemical Brothers of now, right? It's like, I mean, they're still
oh
touring and doing
man,
great things and still releasing, of course, but it's like, I totally agree. It's like, where are the artists that, and there are a lot, but it's so hard to find these people, through all the noise, and that's what everyone always says. It's just, yeah, it's really hard, and that's what I try and do is like, just the reason I write albums is to give people something more, and to give them like something that they can live with, rather than like, here's something that's going to smash for like 3 weeks,
yeah,
And same with like production as well. I remember like distinctly writing Something About You, and writing a whole bunch of like production with it, or like just adding things, and getting to a point where I'm like, you know what, that's not going to stand up in 5 years. I want this record to just go. And actually, like, I was listening to something in the car the other day, and then just with the algorithm, it came on, and I hadn't listened to it in so long. Shock horror, like, DJs don't listen to their own music a lot, but but I listened to it, and I was like, holy shit, like, that sounds like, how do I get that sound again? I was like surprised how great it sounds, and
yeah.
it's 9 years old.
Wow.
And
9
it's
years.
so
I didn't know
simple.
it was that old.
Yeah, end of 2014, so nearly 9 years. And yeah, I was kind of shocked by how like simply beautiful the production was, and I actually downloaded, like, I've got the stems on a Dropbox, and I like downloaded them again to like check out the drums and stuff, because like this sounds awesome. Do it again, dude.
That's the worst when you've had a really big record and you're like, how do I recreate that? But
Totally. But
I think this is the issue that we're talking about.
yeah,
Is that what we're seeing is like, because Spotify show our streams, right? We're like, oh,
dangerous.
and we are like comparing ourselves to a certain extent.
Yeah,
Like, my biggest streaming record isn't necessarily my biggest record,
yeah, yeah.
if that
No,
makes
that's
sense.
it. Yeah.
But the thing
And
is
and
like,
it might not be the record that you spent so much time producing as well. Like, something about you and like Just Friends, they were more like a feeling, and just like,
Yeah.
I just put the keys down. I was like, that sounds good and that feels right to me. It wasn't like, all right, that could be like a placeholder and then I'll figure it out later. It was like, no, that was the moment, and I like played them, and that was it. And I think it was about not thinking about it too much and getting the song across. That's what I do a lot, is like, if you listen to my demos, it doesn't sound great, but it's like, I don't need it to sound good. I just need you to go, wow, that sounds interesting or different, or just makes you feel something, you know?
I think that's it. It evokes a feeling that other things aren't doing right now at that time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So it's hard. It's hard being a part of this world and seeing artists come out with stuff, you know, like if you just follow one artist, they might come out with something every month, and it's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And then, you know, an artist that writes an album, it's like, well, you know, I'm going to release one album every 2 years, kind of maximum, me personally. And yeah, how do you fill that void? It's by remixes, by doing edits and stuff. It's like, yeah, sure, we can do that, but I don't know. I personally enjoy an album. It's very scary. That's what I was saying before, to start an album. I liken it to like writing a book or something. It's just blank page. What do you want to say? I think, yeah, it's a personal journey that I think nearly kills you mentally until you get to the other side and you're like, oh wow, because you live with these songs for quite a while as well. You don't just like, if you I write an album over like nearly a year.
Yeah.
And so you'll have some of the songs that are a year old, and it's like, do you like it anymore? Or like, things will change, or you might listen to something that will affect the way you do something. And yeah, so the records have got to be really strong for you to like it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and then once it's finished, I know we're skipping a way down, and I want to go back on to certain things, but once it's finished, and then you've got a bunch of records that you actually love yourself. Like, for me, there's a relationship between an album records and club singles, which is just completely different. Like,
Totally.
in my mind.
Yep.
But then for me,
Agreed.
it's like that. It's the nerves of like, is anyone else gonna like this?
Or play it. You know, that's the thing as well, is like, oh, I've written these songs, but they don't live in the DJ world, but that's kind of what you want at the same time too. It's like, I want people to like play this.
It's the whole point, right?
Exactly, but it's at the end of the day, it's like, well, hold on, I just want people to listen to it. You know, that's my main thing. Is I want people to listen to it. And that's when I write something. It's like, I want people to be able to listen to it in the morning, getting ready, at lunch, at dinner, pre-drinks, in a club if you want. But like, my main thing is not club. Let's go, which is weird.
It's really
because
interesting.
That is my space as well. It's like, so it's kind of hard when I do go and play these shows, and like, I've been playing some really great shows in the US, some big shows. And I kind of lean in towards the more like heavier stuff, and it's like, no, you should play your own music, dude. You know, it's like, I don't know.
It's really strange, man, because we're in this world where performing is so easy to DJ in a sense of, especially nowadays, is right.
Yeah.
Literally, like, you can write a record today, put it on your USB stick, play it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Easy. As that. There's the process of like it's allowed an album artist like yourself that potentially 10 years ago wouldn't be touring as a DJ. You'd be touring as a live act, right? As quintessential album acts would do in that world.
Yeah.
But it's now allowed you to kind of play very easily in front of a lot of fucking people and get your music heard by a lot of people. But then it's the music that you're writing isn't necessarily fit for that lineup or for that genre or for whatever you're trying to do. So I can definitely see it, and I can relate to that as well. But it's like, how do you get around that?
Well, I mean, you just do your own tour. So you just put your own nights on. So, I mean, that's what I've always done with the release of an album, is like a world tour. So obviously hit Australia pretty hard, and then a lot, like a big US run and a bit of Europe. And that's the most fun, because obviously then you've got people that have bought a ticket to see you, and that's it. And so you can tailor the night any way you like. So that's really exciting to play your own shows, I think, and to play hard ticket shows, because it's like, well, these people paid to see you. Give everything you've got. What's difficult, and what I've kind of grown to like, I really enjoy, is playing clubs, because it's kind of like the off season of like what an album artist does, I guess, is be able to play some of your records, and like maybe you do some edits and things in that different environment. But it's tricky. It is tricky, and it's always, I always second guess myself, or I'm always nervous before. I'm like, oh, am I playing the right stuff? It's like, yeah, dude, like relax. People have come to see you. Yeah, it's hard.
It's really weird, because it's where the lines are blurred with being a DJ, right? And it's like, if you went to see the Rolling Stones, they're not going to go and play Bob Marley, right?
No.
If they did, it'd be fucking sick. But like, in the grand scheme of things, they're not gonna.
Yeah.
Whereas with DJs, it's like, sometimes it in the world where we're at, it's like, well, should I play that single that's like 115 BPM?
You know what?
Well, like,
like Something About You is 115 BPM, and I don't think I've played it in like 4 or 5 years in a DJ set. I do like edits of it, and like, so I've got the acapella obviously, and I'll put it over something that is like current, and it's a vibe, and people are like, oh shit, like I know that song and I know that song, that's cool. And that feels really good. But because it's slow, it's just a different record. You can't just put that. I mean, but here's the thing as well, right? Like, we're talking about that, but it's like, sometimes people love that. It's like stop everything and then put that original on, and that's huge.
Yeah,
so we overthink it. Exactly. So I mean, many times I've had, like, I look at my DMs after a show and just to like repost some stuff, and there'll be people going like, why didn't you play that? And they're angry about it. I'm like, I should have. No.
There is that, isn't it? It's like the audience comes first when it comes to performing. I think for me is like, they are paying a ticket to see us play, and at the end of the day, we need to entertain. And for me, that is when in a live show, the audience comes first all the time.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to the process of writing the album. So the why for you, the why was more so about wanting to make music that lasts a long time.
And I found myself, like, when I sit down and write music, and this album, what I'm doing as well, I wanted to like focus more on like, let's do more club stuff. I end up just churning out stuff that's not like that at all. It's like Hayden James songwriting. Like, there's vocals, and there's, verses and breeze and choruses, and I was like, oh, okay, this is just how I write music. Don't try and change. Don't pigeonhole myself too much. It's like, that's just how it naturally comes out. So just do that. So I found myself, I had like, 5 or 6 records that are like, oh, that might be a single or whatever, but they all work really well together, and they all make me feel a certain way. So it's like, that's a package, like, use that, and bottle it up, and people have really enjoyed them. So I love it. I mean, I've written more and put out more singles between Lifted and this next album, which I'm still writing,
Yeah.
than I ever have before, which has been super fun. And that's I was living in LA for a little bit, so I'd been, I'd had a lot of sessions, and it's like, oh, these are really cool songs. Let's just put them out as singles and kind of roll them out every like 6-8 weeks, which has been good. And none
How
of
do
them
you
are going
find
to
the
be on the album.
difference? How do you find the like difference in that, in like your attitude towards those records and how you expect them to perform, or how you like, is that something you kind of battle with?
Yeah, I think I mean, like, when you release just a standalone song, it's got to be pretty special, right? Or like, you've got to think it's got to be pretty special. Um, yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a lot more. I think there's a lot of pressure because it's just that one piece, and it's like, all right, here we go. This is it. There's nothing else supporting it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I've done this album as well. I've wanted like every song to be like a possible single, which is it's hard because like all of the amazing collaborators and vocalists I'm working with are like, is mine a single? I'm like, oh, I don't know yet. Like it's which is a good problem to have, but yeah, it's definitely when you're releasing just singles, I think it's yeah, I mean, like We Could Be Love, I had probably like 5 or 6 different, very different versions of that record, and I eventually just went with my gut, and it's quite different to what I've ever done before, and some people on the label and some friends and stuff are just not too sure about it, and I'm like, no, I
Yeah.
feel this is right, and then it went like hottest record of the world, with Danny
It's a
Howard,
big
and I was
record.
like, hell yeah! That for me, that moment was just like believe in yourself. It
It's a big
was it
fuck
was
you to
huge,
everybody else,
dude.
right?
I think I
It's like,
cried. I was like, yeah, it was such a good moment. Yeah, it is a big fuck you.
yeah,
It's just like, yeah, do your thing. It's like you're the guy that wrote it. You're the guy that has the streams. Like, believe in yourself.
yeah, and I think I'd like to get your thoughts on that. Is obviously with your first album, Between Us, and then the difference between Us and Lifted,
Mm.
and then the process of the album that you're working on now. How many more cooks get put in the kitchen on a label side, on a team side, on other people's opinions, and how does that actually affect the way you write and the way you're kind of looking at the records that you're writing?
Mm. I've been fortunate to have the same team on every album, which is great. So I'm with Future Classic, who's an Australian independent record label, and they now have a footprint in the States as well. So it's the same people I've been dealing with, which is great,
That's
and we
great.
obviously know each other well. Same with my management, Luke Allen at Red Light, and my team. We've all been together from that first album, which is great, and they know me and how to deal with me if I'm being annoying or frustrated or whatever. But at the end of the day, like with the music, I find they're like the parents, right? And I'm that the kid just like running around the playground, not knowing what he's doing. But the music at the end of the day, the great thing about being a solo artist is like it's just up to you. So
Yeah.
people can have their opinions and all that kind of stuff. I think the biggest and the hardest thing is to learn to listen to your own voice, because everyone's going to have these things. I remember writing Just Friends, and I played it to a bunch of mates, and they were like, dude, this is way too many lyrics. I'm not even going to remember all these. It's not good. And I'm like, oh, okay. I disagree with you massively on that. And then look what it did, It's,
Yeah.
yeah, you just got to learn how to listen to yourself. Because if you keep changing stuff based on what other people are saying, obviously everyone's got a very different idea of what a good song is, and it's so subjective. And that's the great thing about this art. So
Yeah.
yeah, you just got to figure out what you want, and that's it. Because end of the day, everyone's going to say something different, and you'll be stuck if you'll be creatively stuck if you listen to these people.
Do you play your records to a lot of people beforehand, or is there like just a handful of people that you kind of have?
My wife Jen, like I play everything too, and I've got a we have like a Jenny dance approval. Like if you really like something, she'll like, oh no. So, which is good. It's never steered me wrong. So that's awesome. I actually play, I won't send records to like DJ mates or band mates or anything like that. I'll send them to friends that aren't in the industry at all, that don't
Yeah.
really listen too much to music. The ones that, the records that I know, I'm trying to go like, I think this could be really something, and like, you know, a more of a mass audience. And so I send records to people like that. I also do things like kind of tricky things where like if I have people over for a barbecue or something, I'll set up a playlist and like slide in a couple of demos in between. And you know, sometimes
See
people be
what
like,
happens.
"Can you change the playlist?" or like, "What's that song?" So yeah, it's dicey sometimes, but yeah, I like to just like do that as well, because how often do people go listen to this record and everyone just sits there and doesn't say anything? That doesn't happen. That's not natural.
No.
And it feels forced and weird. So when I do play stuff to people, I either go, listen to it in your own time, how you listen to music, whether it's going to work or going for a run, whatever. Or yeah, just do your own thing and get back to me, instead of like, hey, let's be quiet and listen to this record. So
Well,
that,
there's that rule of 3, isn't there? Whereas like you have to hear something 3 times before you can actually have an opinion on something. And for me, that is like massively the case. I'm sure you've had it where you've like been sent a record and you're like, oh, I can't stand that.
yeah,
Or you've heard somebody release a record and then you're like, oh, I can't stand that. And then you hear it in the gym and you're like, oh, what's that record? And then you hear it on the radio, like, oh, fuck, I actually really like this record. And realistically, you were just being an absolute snob when you first heard it.
yeah,
Like,
because everyone else likes it or something. I was actually, there's one record that I was like, that I don't get it wrong often. I feel like if it's a good song, I'm like, I just, you know, you will know. There's one time that I was like, this song sucks. And then like, yeah, a couple of months later, I'm like, holy shit, this is incredible. It was Zoo Faded. So I was like, oh,
yeah.
that was a record. I think that was like 10 years ago as well. But
Yeah.
that was my downfall. But
It's definitely interesting that how that happens. And I think it's also is like, oh, when you, I think it's perfectly normal to say is like when you see somebody having a bit of success, you're like, oh, I could have done that, or like,
Totally.
or like that record shouldn't be doing that well. Like mine should be doing better than that. Blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
I think at the crux of it is like, you know what? It's a fucking good record. If it's a great record, it's going to do well.
100%. That's it. That's it. And I mean, just going back to that, it's like, for me, it's always been about the music. So you can have, now it's a bit more, unfortunately, with like socials and all this kind of stuff. But like, if you nail the music, that's it. That, for me, a lot of people will say like, oh, you only need a record to be like 50% good. And then, you know, there's all that bullshit. But it's like, you know what? If a good song will always cut through. Always.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need the right team and the right people to push it and all that kind of stuff. But like, if you want a record to live, like that is how you do it, right? The good fucking song. Spend time writing the record.
I think also nowadays, I think you definitely have the like social aspect was like, yeah, if you have an okay record, but you have great socials, you're good at TikTok, you have this huge like, or you have the ability to create a viral moment, right? It's very easy, not very easy. It's actually very hard to do that. But if you're in that situation, it's easy to make an average record do well, really well, right?
I think the difference between the same viral moment and an okay, like average record and an amazing record is just the lifespan of the record.
Totally, exactly.
You know?
That's literally what I was going to say. Is like that record can, and we've seen this especially over the last year. Whereas like you have all these like edits that are popping off that are doing really well for like a month, and then you're like, well, no one's listening to that record anymore.
But imagine, and again, no diss to anyone that it's doing this or touring off this, because like that it's awesome to just tour and do this stuff.
I respect it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. But if you're not fame, but just like popularity, I guess, is based off just super quick stuff like that. That's like, oh, this is just churning out like, you know, every 3 weeks. I'd find that quite difficult. I'd find it much easier to tour and come to clubs and play shows based off a whole history of records that span over years. Of course, I mean that's of course, but it's neither here nor there. I mean, like, you know,
No, I agree. I think for me,
I don't know what I
is
was trying to say.
longevity.
You know what I mean?
No, I guess I think what I think you're trying to say is just longevity.
Yeah,
And I think for me,
that's
it's
been
like,
a
let's
key
say
for
for
me.
instance,
Yeah,
let's say for instance, like Something About You, like you said, was released like nearly 10 years ago. Like, there's not many people that can have a record that lasts that long in the market that we're living in now. Like,
yeah,
even some of the biggest artists that, like, not to name names, but even some of the biggest artists that are literally the biggest artists in the DJ world right now, like they're releasing so often because they need to keep that wheel churning.
yeah.
It's
It's a different business. It's just a different business, right?
Yeah, and it throws, and there's nothing wrong with this, but
No.
for me, it's like it actually devalues your music because it's like, well, actually, no, I've made this record, and this record stands the test of time.
Yeah,
And it will stand the test of time forever.
yeah,
Like for me, like I know the Camel Fat Boys
Yep.
don't play Cola, but for me, like Cola was like one of the last ones that we had of that, where it was like it just lasted
yeah.
forever.
I haven't
still
seen
great.
them play. I've never seen them play, but I'm not surprised they don't play Cola. But why do you
No,
think
me
that
neither.
is? Like, I mean, because it's. I mean, it's not the same level, but that's my something about you in terms of like, and I don't play that, so I guess I know
think-
the answer.
Yeah, why?
I feel it's overplayed, and I feel that people don't need to hear it anymore. But it's like, no, but it's your
this
biggest
is such
streamer.
a
What do you?
weird. Yeah, but this is such a weird attitude to have, and this is what I was going to say, right?
So
this
weird.
is only DJs would have this attitude.
Yeah.
Because, like, Kanye is going and performing all of Kanye's biggest hits when he goes and performs.
Yeah.
Jay-Z, Beyonce is going to. She's not going to play her Lemonade.
Exactly.
She's not
Yeah.
like Taylor Swift's not going to play whatever her biggest records are.
Yeah.
It's so weird to me. And you know what? Like, I toured quite a lot of MK in like around 2018. We were on the same management at that time, and it was the one thing that I actually took from the management that came out of that. They were like, "You have to play your records.
Yeah.
You have to play your biggest records." And I was like, "Why?" And they're like, "We're not DJs anymore. We're a show, and people are coming to buy tickets to see you play you.
Yeah.
And they listen to your music, and this is the only chance they're going to get to hear you play you." And that's interesting.
You know what? That's yeah. Wow. I'm going to start playing my own music again. But but it's you know what? A lot of the records I think that I write that are very, and kind of like the MK stuff too, I guess, that are very vocal driven. Unless they're really made for the dance floor, no one else is playing them either, right? No other DJ, because it's just a different vibe, or it's, you know, like even like the Sonny Federas and stuff like that. Like there are some records, obviously, that like lots of DJs play, but then there are ones that's like, oh, just they play. So it's important that you know, as that artist, play the fucking record. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was always interesting, like watching Mark play. Like every time he played one of his records, the crowd just changed.
Yeah.
And like he goes in between like playing club records and his own records.
Yeah.
But like the atmosphere just changed in the room, and you're like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Like
we're thinking
they're here
too
to
hard.
see that.
What are we like? We are really thinking about it too much. And as well, like it's you're up there, but like most people I know play pretty sober, so you're up there like in a very different state as well. And you I think you forget that the people in the crowd, a lot of them are like, you know, having fun and on drugs or just completely hammered and just like and just excited and want to react to your songs too. So I think we're just overthinking them sometimes, like the sets. I don't know.
Calvin's great at it. He's great when he's when playing live. You just like I
he
remember
just
like listening to his
bang
plays
bang
hits.
bang 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 bang. Yeah. And that's what I want as well. It's like, yes,
The thing
see,
is, you
people
can.
want that.
Exactly. This is the thing. We're like so contradicting ourselves because it's like everybody wants the biggest hits, but like,
That's amazing. All right.
yeah.
Well, we've done it. Like, managers have told us all the time. It's like, we've just figured it out. We're going to play our own records. I'm excited.
Report back. Let
Okay.
me know how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, didn't work. Didn't work out.
So album 3. Sorry to like holler on at this.
No.
But like I'm really interested in the process, and you give yourself a year. Okay, so you decide to write an album, then what?
And then the hard thing is you've got to wait. So it's like, I've got a deadline coming up real soon, but it's the record, like the album is not going to be out for like another 4.5 months after that.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously the singles will start to roll out and then the album. So you build like the campaign, but it's hard to sit on that music and be so excited. And that's why I guess now having the social aspect of it is like, cool, I can actually tease this stuff and like kind of release the record in a different way before it's actually out. And that's kind of the goal too, right? I guess these days is having those viral moments on the TikToks and all that kind of stuff where it's like, I need this now, those are the records that really pump. It's like, you need to sell them that way. Cold, like, how would you say it? It's like cold releasing a record is very difficult because, people haven't heard it and you just wanted to shove it down their throats. Like, yeah, it's a bit, so having that like build is obviously kind of the goal. So that's it. It's really funny as well. It's once you write an album and you're like, I'm done with the album, it's mastered, like that's the album. The like release you get from that, like literally physically you feel the pressure coming off your chest. You're like, oh my gosh, yes. And you just write probably a whole nother album. It's pretty funny. It might be shit, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But you'll just like personally, I write just a lot more stuff.
Why is that?
It's I guess it goes back to like when you first started writing music, there was no pressure. There was no, you had no fans, right?
Yeah.
You had no like tour and tickets you needed to sell and all this kind of stuff. So you're like, I'm just writing because I'm writing music and that's what I'm doing. There's nothing else I'm doing here. But now it's like, well, I know what rooms I'm playing in the States and this album has got to do something to sell those rooms out. And that's what I think in the back of my head, where it's like, you shouldn't. You should be in here and relax and enjoy the writing process, which I think I really have this time. Not that I haven't the other times, but I've felt much less pressure this time. I think that might be because I've slightly pigeonholed myself a little bit. Like I just knew what I wanted this time a lot more than the other times.
Yeah.
And
what was that?
Records I could play in DJ sets. Full circle.
Dude, need to write a new album.
Yeah. That's it. That is it.
That's so good. That's so good.
But honestly, that like, it's records that I would be comfortable playing in DJ sets that would slide in with other people, like with other stuff that I like playing too. I went in with that. I've come out with something a little bit different because guess what? Like that's just how the writing process works. And I'm proud of that because it's like, you didn't change who you are. You just like, you've just shifted a couple gears or like you've turned a couple of things there and it's come out a little bit differently, which I love. But yeah, there's no more like, like numb 75 BPM records for this one. It's all like, I think the slowest record is like 124 and the fastest is like 130. So it's in that pocket, and knowing that gave me, well, I've written like 60 records and I'm choosing like 10 and they all just have to fit the criteria. Like one, is it a good song? Two, and sometimes you break the rules. You're like, you know what? This is just good. It's got to go on. One, is it a good record? Two, would I be comfortable actually playing this record out? Three, would other people play it out? Which is actually not that important to me. But for
Yeah.
people who are going to just listen to it as well, like I don't want to write a record that's going to alienate the people that want to listen to it while they're, making a salad for lunch, whatever it is.
Totally. Yeah.
So
How long is that process to go from the 60 to the 10? How long is the process of tick boxing all of those records?
it kind of just happens over the period of writing the records. Like I'll have like a writing camp or something and just like have a whole bunch of collaborators in and come out with like 10 or 15 songs over like a week. But when I say songs, you know what I mean? Like there'll be demos or like bits and pieces or snippets of like, that could be something. And then you won't ever listen to them again. And they just sit in the pile. That's actually funny. There's a record, which I think could be my lead single, which was just sitting in the pile. And my label were like, hey, what's up with this? And I heard it again. I was like, holy shit. Like, wow, that's different. That's sick.
Yeah.
So I do listen,
they're always the best
to people.
ones.
Yeah, totally.
No, they're always the best ones because it's like, I remember with mine, I was in the studio with a guy called Mitch Jones, who I have wrote a lot of the album with, or he's helped me on certain things with it as well. And we were like, okay, let's just go back to the very first session.
Yeah.
And we had a record and we were like, well, how did we forget about this?
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
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 And it was like a 2 o'clock in the morning jobby where you just like, you're just writing a vibe, and they're the important ones.
I think so. And people always say it, but it's just the case. It's like the ones that you do just quickly and just like instinctively are the records that end up being like, wow, that's so sick, you know?
But I think it's also the process of writing the 60 records. It's like any career, right? It's like that whole, it's almost like a therapy. It's like a therapeutic of like just putting that work in and having to do the hours to achieve the 60 records, to achieve the 80 records, however many records you have to write to get the product that you want to get to.
Yeah.
I think there's a process in that you have to do.
Totally. And 30 of them can be like so horrible that you'd never want to listen to them again. But that all, as you said, it's like that all counts. You have to do that to get to the next part. I think the big thing as well, like for me when I write, is like if you're coming up with the same vibe and the same feeling, don't keep doing that. It's very easy to go into the same room with the same keyboard and figure out why things aren't working. It's like, what's going on? Just change your process a bit. One big thing I do as well is I go and write, not in my studio. I actually haven't written much in this studio at all. It's more just being a listening hub, I guess. But I do most of it like AirPods or just with my laptop. And I've got a whole like studio here, and I like hardly use it because I enjoy being out going to like my parents' place and just like sitting there when no one's there and just, being in a different environment. It's really good. Yeah.
That's interesting because I think when did you find that you had to do that?
I think it was touring. It was traveling. It was like, because I was always, wherever I was in the world, it was like, I just got used to that. And now I enjoy just like, well, that's all I need. It's the laptop, just a MIDI keyboard. I've got the sounds I need at the moment. If I need like the Prophet 5 or something like that, I can track that later. But usually it's just like, oh, I've just got the stuff in the box and I've created that feeling that I need. So, yeah. But for me as well, I'm very visual. So one thing I do all the time, just to get a vibe on just playing chords, is it'll always change. I'll go on YouTube and like, look, I'll type in like 10 best beaches in the world or something, and then just like turn the sound off and like watch and play.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or like my favorite video clip, or like a movie scene, and just turn the sound off and just like score it. And you'll always come up with something that you probably wouldn't have if you're just sitting there, just trying to write something.
Just trying to write something. Yeah, because I think we all have that go-to sound that we always go to, the go-to drums, the go-to chord progression. Like,
totally.
It's the same.
Totally.
It's like, I remember going into sessions with people. Like I did a session with Dot from London Grammar.
Oh,
and like,
awesome.
I love London Grammar. Like they're my favorite band.
Oh yeah. Her voice is just, wow.
Oh, she's unbelievable. Yeah. But like when we were in the session, we like wrote this club record, and then I was like, do you want to just play some keys, like put some keys down? And the minute he played, I was like, wow, that's a London grammar chord.
Oh,
And
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's and everyone has these like signature sounds
Yeah.
that we all need in our music, but I think sometimes it's how do you make that different so that people know that it's you, but also it's not copying what you've done for the last two
Yeah.
albums.
I find that like interesting, like people like, oh, you know, the Hayden James sound, the Will Clarke sound, like, and I personally, like, I'm like, I don't really know what my sound, I just do my thing. But,
Yeah,
you know, and someone said, what's your sound? I always just end up saying, like, I don't know, summer, housey, like, I don't know, just tick, 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 whatever. But,
yeah,
yeah, people seem to know how to, um, express your sound, I guess, to you more than you do, which is
100%.
interesting. Yeah.
Because I guess if you say, like, let's say for instance, like Rufus the Soul, you know a Rufus the Soul record from miles away, right? Like, you know a Chemical Brothers record from miles away. The minute
Pizza.
you hear that Chemical Brothers, like, you can hear the drums, you can hear the bass
That's
lines,
I'm
you can
just
hear
like,
how they
I
sample.
straight
Yeah,
away. Yeah.
you just know it.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy when we have our own sound because we're doing it.
Exactly. You
It's,
are that entity or
yeah,
that
we're
person.
that.
Yeah.
But like for us to describe that, it's like when people ask, like, when people ask you to describe your sound,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. You just feel.
It's not for us to say as
No,
well.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
It's
No one
not for
asks us
us
that
because
anymore. And I'm
it's
like,
so boring. Such a
yeah.
boring question.
Yeah. That's it.
How do you feel the scene is at this moment in time? How do you feel the music industry is generally?
I think it's like probably more exciting than it ever has been because there's so
Really?
much craziness going on. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to keep up. It really is.
Yeah.
Um, I try and read quite a lot because if you're just looking at like the Beatport, you know, charts and all that kind of stuff, you're in this like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I try and yeah, just kind of. My manager gives me a lot of music, just like and just it doesn't have to be dance
Interesting.
music. Just lots of different.
Yeah.
He loves you know jazz and just all different stuff. So I don't listen to a lot of dance music. I listen to a lot of like Encanto and Luca and Peppa Pig and
Yeah.
all that stuff, which is amazing by the way. But uh, yeah, I think especially the UK, there's just you know the Barry Can't Swims, the Sammy Verges, like all these guys, like you know, and obviously Fred and all that kind of stuff. It's just incredible. It's just exploding, and it's so
Yeah.
different, which is awesome. That's why I love it. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, that music is crazy. I would never think to write something like that in my life, and people are going nuts. It's just like, yeah, I love it.
Does that ever affect what you write in the studio for yourself, though?
No, no, it's just too different in a great way.
Yeah.
And I think that if you started doing that, people would be like, "What are you doing, bro?" Like, yeah. And
Yeah.
you'd know yourself. You'd be like, "Oh, that's not the Hayden James sound." You
Yeah.
know, that's not it. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
it
That
doesn't
must.
affect it.
I think that's super important though, to be able to like sit back in and observe from an artist's perspective.
And be a
But
fan. And I'm just like, I'm just a fan.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
cool.
It's
You
so
know?
important to be able to be a fan. It's hard though, isn't it? Have you ever come to a point where you're not a fan? Is there ever been a point in your career where you actually struggle to be a fan of it?
Just of my own stuff.
Okay.
And just when I'm writing is hard. So when you know when we're talking about like writing 60 songs and making it, you know, turning it into 10, some days you'll write 10 of the worst songs of your life and you'll question everything you do and you'll be like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?" And
Yeah.
it's scary because it's like it's only you and it's, you know, it's that's the difficult time. And so what I do is just like leave the room, like take the headphones off and just like do something completely different. Like I love
Yeah.
cooking, I love swimming, I love, you know, just going out and doing something else. And that clears the mind. And then sometimes like even with records, if you're having trouble with it, whatever, spend some time away from it. And I mean like months, you know, and you'll come back to it and be like, wow, that's a record. And you may have like ruined it if you try to keep going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you take time off music generally? Is it a point where you're like, okay, I'm done writing for a certain amount of time?
I've never done that because I just enjoy writing.
Yeah.
But I don't spend a lot of time writing. Does that make sense? It's like I'm not in here like the kids are not at school yet. Like I love hanging out with them, so we're like doing stuff all the time, and so I don't usually get like 5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours at least in the studio by myself, which I think is part of why I've found success is because I'm not buckled in here, like, trying to do stuff that isn't working.
Yeah.
I've got literally sometimes half an hour or maybe 2 hour block. And that is enough time to listen to that record again and go, oh, no, that's the direction. That's it exactly. So that half an hour you could have come to the same conclusion with an 8 hour block, So I think that's a big thing for me and how my brain works when I write is just like take some time away from it and then just come in here and like, bang, that's it.
Limitations, isn't it?
Big time. But then I'll spend a lot of time producing and mixing the records. That takes a hell of a lot of time. But getting that initial, like, that's the song, is pretty quick. Because it's pretty quick. When I first started writing, it took me a while. After Something About You, I actually didn't release a record for like a year and a half, which is, imagine doing that now.
Really?
That's like career suicide.
Wow.
It's like, it's crazy. Because of the pressure of like, holy crap, this song is like blown up. What do I do?
Yeah.
And I was just writing records and writing like 50 versions of one song. And you're like, oh, bro, you're really hurting yourself here. Yeah.
But what was that pressure like?
It sucked. It was daunting and it was very difficult. But as well, I was such a young artist as well. It was like when I first started writing music. So I had that connection because I wrote that record that went well. But it was difficult to, because you try and top it, and it's like, well, don't try and do that. Yeah, I guess hindsight's it's a great thing. So yeah, now I don't do that. Now it's just like every journey is different. And I enjoy it in a different way. But back then it was, I didn't really know what I was even doing.
And you're still having extreme success.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. It's like, I don't, I love my family life. I do a lot of touring, but I don't really get sucked into the hype of stuff. And I don't have like, all my mates are like from school and like, they don't really give a shit in a great way, So it's, I've never really, in my head, I've kind of got imposter syndrome, I guess. I don't find myself. But then when you go to a show and people kind of lose it when they meet you, it's like, what? Like, I'm like, it's weird, you. I'm like, what are you? Yeah. Can I hang out with you? What are you talking about?
Yeah. It goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about my view on your career, though. It's a really interesting. From an outsider's point of view, it is really interesting of how you've carved your career out of something that shouldn't fit in a quintessential DJ world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you've made it fit in a DJ, non-DJ world, and it works perfectly for you. And there's something beautiful about that I think a lot of people don't even have the balls to do that.
Thanks, man. That's very nice. That means a lot. And I've just got to play my own records to do that.
Well, you got to write a new album now. That's literally the thing.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's amazing to be a part of something. Yeah, to be a part of something, to be honest. And at the end of the day, that's the great thing is like, we're all trying to do the same great thing, and it's just connect with people and write great music and build a community. And that's it. And that's why I'm such a big fan of like stuff that I don't even understand. Even like Skrillex's stuff. I have no idea what he's doing. And I do the same thing. It's like, it's awesome to be I think being a fan, like a music fan, is a great thing if you're an artist, obviously, because you know, the appreciation you get from other people's talents and skills is drives me. You know,
Yeah,
cool.
totally, totally. I love that, man, and I think that's a perfect way to end this conversation on a positive.
Yes, always, always.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No worries. I think when this comes out, you have a new single coming out,
Yes,
from what I've been told.
yes,
Tell people about that
yeah. Now, okay.
now.
It's this song coming out. I think it came out a couple of days ago, and it's called "Make It." And it's actually the first. It's the first song that I've used a sample in. I used.
Oh, cool.
I went on TrackLib because I actually got
Yeah,
fed the Instagram like ads, and I'm like, "What is
yeah.
this all about?" And then I spent like an hour on it.
Those ads are so good.
They're incredible. So I was like, oh, wow, I can do stuff like that. So I went on, and an hour later, I was like, I've got a record here. So TrackLib. But it's with a Sydney guy called Cormac. I've been a fan of his for many, many years.
His stuff's great.
It's so good. And he's been helping me on the album as well with some production stuff and drum stuff. And yeah, he's just incredible. So yeah, this is our first collab called Make It. And yeah, it's a belter.
Sick, man. Sick. Well, it's out. Go listen to it, people.
Go listen.
How can people get involved with Hayden James? How can people follow you? How can people
do all the
see you
stuff?
play?
Yeah, it's Hayden James on Instagram, YouTube, X.
X. What's? Oh yeah, Twitter.
Formerly known as. And I'm going to be.
That's so weird.
Yeah,
That's so weird. That a platform got changed. But can you remember when TikTok was Musically?
No.
So TikTok used to be an app called Musically.
Oh wow! What?
Yeah, and then the Chinese bought it, and it changed to TikTok.
Oh, there you go. Oh, crazy.
Yeah,
there you go.
Amazing.
Love
right, dude. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, mate.
I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Fantastic.
Peace.
See you, buddy.
And that's a wrap. Big love to Hayden for coming on. Absolutely loved it. If you listened, please subscribe, please share, please send it to everybody. Give us a little review. Love you lots. Until next time, people.